the dead, violence against women with deadly consequences, defilement of underage children, runaway graft, and court ruling that was pushed forward but has society on edge. But amid all this calm and missing shared sense of responsibility, but whose job is it to police the society? Tonight, Sidebar speaks to a member of the clergy, a man who has styled himself as a moral cop and an activist who sees the future in all colors, and a lady who says she knows where the buck stops. But first, my take. Now, President Uhuru Kenyatta has made war on corruption a pillar of his administration. He repeatedly expressed resolve to deal ruthlessly and fearlessly with culprits of corruption. Just last week, he reinstated his commitment to the cause and declared that he would not spare anybody in the crusade. Now, Kenyans take this pledge very seriously. Last year, the administration demonstrated that by seizing and charging those people who are caught with graft. And of course, several top government officials suspected of graft were found. Last week, reports also surfaced about 4 cabinet secretaries under investigations of suspected corrupt transactions within their various ministries. However, it seems politics is coming into the mix, and the administration seems to be approaching the matter half-heartedly for the fear of political backlash. Now, nobody steals from the government on behalf of a community or of a political party. It is not about the individuals, and that is why we are encouraged when we hear President Uhuru Kenyatta declare that anyone and everyone must carry their own cross and not as a representative of an ethnic group or a political caucus. Now, oftentimes, fear of political fallouts undermines resolve to tackle such malpractices. Now, wheeler dealers who skim off government resources are acutely aware of that and makes perfect use of those opportunities. Now, we detest this and urge the administration not to do the wrong thing and do the right thing. In this past week alone, the public has been rocked by fresh reports of unfolding scandals. One is that of the one that is turning out to be multi-billion shilling phantom projects. The government paid about 21 billion shillings to a bankrupt Italian firm to build 2 dams that never have been seen, not to forget the many other existing but stalled mega dam projects through which the public risk losing billions of shillings. The second one is the contentious takeover of the airports by the Kenya Airways in a murky deal cloaked in mystery. Now, the third is a suspicious deal of the procurement of outdated transit trains for Nairobi Metropolitan. Now, this aside from old, long-running scandals which continue to dominate public debates and are yet to be resolved. Now, corruption, fraud, and other malpractices thrive because of the inaction. Now, the perpetrators never go to sleep. Networks of graft and racketeers never die. They simply hibernate when the environment becomes conducive or when it's hostile, and they come back. Nevertheless, they are shakeable through drastic actions, which is what we demand. Now, investigative agencies such as the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission and the Directorate of Criminal Investigation and, of course, the Director of Public Prosecution must interrogate those ministers suspected of fraud activities, and if evidence is obtained, get them and their hirings and charge them, of course, in court. Anything to the contrary is disastrous, as we have seen before. Public officials suspected of financial impropriety and other transgressions must face the full weight of the law. And of course, tonight we borrow from the words of Albert Einstein. He says, "The world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything." And of course, my guests tonight, Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, Brenda Wambui, Eric Gitari, and Dr. David Oginde was supposed to come. Unfortunately, he sent his apologies. At Ken Mijungu, welcome to our program tonight. The hashtag, as always, is Sidebar. Join the conversation at NTV Kenya. We'll be giving you their Twitter handles later. Sidebar begins right now.
We live in this country. We have ourselves as individuals suffered from the corruption scourge that is in the country.
Some of the programs that come within the watershed that have extreme sexual content, no matter how popular they are, they need to be taken outside the watershed.
We need to be creative, we need to think and we need to love our people.
In Kenya, to be gay, the LGBT community is illegal. They just want to have equal rights.
This is an issue that the people of Kenya themselves have clearly stated that this is not a subject that they are willing to engage in.
The government has a duty to protect and uphold the constitutional rights of all its citizens, regardless of their sexual orientation.
All right, welcome again, ladies and gentlemen, to the show. And let me begin with you, Daktari, just to get this out of the way before we get to our discussion. Over the last week, there is a lady who posted some information on social media alleging harassment in the office. Do you work with this lady, or does she work in your office?
KFCB clarified that issue.
Yes.
We've never had anyone like that before my term or during my term, so it's a non-issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
Does it bother you that someone will fabricate such things and say
I
about
expect it. I mean, when I got into KFCB,
yes,
I remember a meeting I did with my staff, my colleagues, that went up to 7, and I was trying to persuade them that I think by coming here, I'm becoming the last line of defense. No reputation,
okay, and
I don't care what people say. For us to be able to fight the war on immorality, it's like corruption. Just can't look for popularity. Got to do what is right.
Okay.
And I'm very happy that my colleagues agreed with that narrative. For the last 3 years, we've raised the bar of moral standards very high. We have created a national conversation, and the price to pay for it is having, such kind of things. No basis. Anyone can sit anywhere. But if someone now says today you are in Mombasa, right this time, and they publish stuff, would you bother? You are here. We know you're not in Mombasa, so just ignore it.
Have you taken action? For example, the police.
Why would I take?
It doesn't bother you at all?
That article said we are going to court. Where would you take action on? It was a parody account.
Okay.
It was fake.
Okay.
But if there was a real person, then I was waiting. We would meet in court.
Okay.
So the fact that no one went to court. Remember, it ended with let's meet in court. So
yes, you're waiting to go to court.
I mean, first of all, the board clarified we've never had an employee like that. Yes. Before, during, or during my time. So it's a non-issue.
Okay.
And let's not waste time on it. You're giving it credence. I ignored it.
Okay.
It's the
we
first
just
time I've
get it
commented
out of the way because that was absurd.
No, it's a non-issue.
You know the other absurd thing?
Yeah.
When your term was about to be renewed, there are also reports that your term has not been renewed.
Absolutely. And there were kinds of space in the newspapers. The thing is, I think I'm making an impact, and I think anyone who is making an impact will have those kind of side shows, distractions, and so on. I think the best thing is to stay focused.
Okay.
The work of regulation is not for the faint-hearted. It's not the work of seeking for popularity. I am not at KFCB to look good. I'm not there to be popular. I'm not looking for political popularity. I just want to do what is right in line with the law. Okay. And I think so far so good. You know that we have not had many cases where we have been sued. The only case that we have about Wanuri, it went to court. Look at the kind of conversation we have created, and out of all these, on one case, other than the other one of Kenyan breweries. And the people have a right to go to court when their rights are infringed. Okay. We have a right to go to court if we feel we have dealt with this issue, we have given a demand warning or something, and nobody has complied. We can go to court as well and prosecute. Okay. The fact that we have those other channels, or recourse or redress in law, I think gives me the comfort that the conversation is necessary. It does not undermine anybody's rights. We need to talk about morality. And give me just 1 minute to say this. You've started this program exemplary well, because you talked about a wider, I thought it would just touch on the government, but you touch on a wider scope of issues that bring us to one point, that we have a problem in this country. As it's not a problem of the government, it's a problem of society. It's a problem of moral issues. If you look at that clip where the president and the CG are speaking, it looked like everybody had a problem with everybody. And nobody seems to take responsibility. Okay. And you can see the frustration of the president, despite the commitment on the war on corruption, because it boiled down not just to laws, but to values at individual level. Exactly. It's a moral issue. Okay. And we're not going to overcome the war on corruption until it goes down to the basics. Okay. Any nation in the world, whether you're talking about North Korea, or whether you're talking about Singapore, Malaysia, countries that are progressed from difficulties and become first world economies, they started by sorting out the moral foundation.
I'd like to talk about that, and I'll bring you now to the conversation, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry, we had to get out of the way. Yeah. I'd like to begin this conversation by also talking about backlash that I'd like you to also contribute in. When you spoke about the antics of Akode, who's a musician in the country, you used to getting such backlash on social media, and of course, but what is the problem you find with what she did on stage?
I think the issue is the putting a difference between, or a clear line between what one can do in private and what you can do in public. We have no issues with what people do in their privacy or in their private, in their houses and in their private place. But when you come to the public space, especially if you're a public, you're a musician or a performer or an artist, the government regulates that space. There's so much that I can do now because this is a public space. I'm in public. But when I go home, nobody should really mind what I do. So what happened is we find these things are continuing, obscene, dirty, vulgar music and addicts that our artists and filmmakers, musicians are involved in. And we're just calling out for what it is, that it doesn't have to be obscene or sexualized to sell. I think we've reached a point where we want to make everything sexualized. I saw some spray that is meant with the calves. Did you see that? There's an advert with spray with the calves of a woman. Everything, it is even objectifying women so that it can sell. And I think what we are trying to say as a regulator is there's a line.
Okay.
As far as public space is concerned, because the government regulates public space. I'll give you an example of the road, the public road. If there are vehicles passing by, they are used by all manner of people. And I think when people start interfering with each other's space, you need the government, you need the traffic police to say, hey, Brenda, you are, drive on this lane, this is your lane. Mutua, this is your lane. Don't interfere with our space. The person with the mandate to do that is the government.
It's the regulator.
Yeah.
All right. He finds a problem definitely with what happens. Whatever happens in public has to be regulated. Do you find a problem with what happened on stage?
Actually, I want to begin by saying that the Constitution of Kenya 2010, which Ken and Eric and I have copies of, in Article 10, because this is the document that we have agreed as Kenyans. It's our social contract. This is what binds us to each other and to our state. There's nowhere in this constitution, at least in our national values, where it speaks of morality. In fact, the national values and principles of governance of this country, known as Kenya, are patriotism, national unity, sharing and devolution of power, the rule of law, democracy, participation of the people. But the most interesting part for me, the one that stands out, human dignity, equity, social justice, inclusiveness, equality, human rights, non-discrimination, and protection of the marginalized. There's nowhere in this that it speaks about morality, because morality is subjective. Secondly, Dr. Mutua spoke about the effectiveness of his organization, the KFCB, as a reason to why he feels that they are being attacked, which is known colloquially on the social medias as haters don't like me because I'm making an impact. But I will say that the last known audit report of the KFCB from the it was 2016 by the Auditor General actually issues a qualified audit. So for us who are trained in audit, you can get an unqualified audit, you can get a qualified one. In this case, it states that there was outstanding cash and cash equivalents of 374,500, could not be reconciled. There was outstanding payments, that's from 2014-2015, of 274,000 that, 204 that were outstanding to the Auditor General's office, outstanding interests of 1.6 million, trade and trade payables of 1.06 million, and that was the reason that the Office of the Auditor General could not give an unqualified report. An unqualified report is basically you have passed your audit. This means you haven't. So if we are to look at the state, these are the officers we have decided to engage with. I would say that the effectiveness of this organization is also in question. And to finish on the KFCB's mandate, the KFCB is created by the Film and Stage Plays Act of 1962, and their mandate is to regulate film, the creation, the distribution, the possession, the exhibition, and the broadcasting of film, review it, issue a classification, and to give public advice. There's nowhere in the mandate of his office. Yes, there's nowhere in the mandate of Dr. Mutua's office in which he has the locus standi, in the courts or anywhere else to regulate anybody's morality. And finally, according to our constitution, because it's also quite subjective, Article 8 of our constitution states that the state shall have no religion. So on what basis? Because morality is not one of our national values. We don't have a national religion. This is not a theocracy.
Your argument, Brenda, is because we don't have this in the law, then it shouldn't be done.
No,
is that your argument?
Morality is subjective. It's personal, and everybody has personal responsibility as to the freedoms and the opinions that they hold. We have freedom of opinions.
What if your freedom affects others?
How does, I think you mentioned Akode, the musician.
Yes.
How does Akode performing at night to an audience that consented to be there affect anybody else's freedoms? They chose to be there.
When the pictures are splashed on social media and everyone has access to the social media, does it not affect
they are a matter of personal
even
discretion?
the people? Don't they affect even the people who are not at the concert? Why don't you also keep your private space to that performance?
I think it is to the discretion, like if you're following up
To the discretion of the performer?
the viewer. The performer is responsible for their the performer is responsible for their performance, yeah? In the space in which they performed, for whom attended, and then now what happens after that? It's the same thing that we say about things like Facebook and Twitter.
Okay, I'll come back to Dr. He wants to respond, but I want David, you comment. Do you find a problem with what we saw on social media, or the fact that KFCB had to come in and talk about it?
I have always maintained that Mr. Mutua is constantly acting out of bias, outside of his constitutional mandate, to classify films and to regulate content for the public. What he's doing with Akode, who is a very brilliant artist and a hardworking woman, is shocking, and just represents what most of our society has been socialized to do in terms of how men view women. This is toxic masculinity. The fact that man cannot, for example, Ezekiel Mutua cannot believe that or imagine that Akothe can be as successful and brilliant as she is something that is not being socialized or used to. I would be curious, for example, to hear him compare her performances with male acrobats who are always stretching their legs in public or at Kenya National Theatre. You know, Article 33 of the Constitution gives us the right to artistic creativity, but it also says that you shouldn't use the freedom to express yourself in artistic creativity or other means to vilify others or to incite hatred towards others. And this is what Mr. Mutua has been doing, using state power.
Dr. Mutua. Dr. Mutua.
Refer to me as okay, anyway, make your point.
I have no idea about his academic qualifications, but going back to the point about the freedom to artistic expression in Kenya, I think he's acting beyond his mandate, and he might want to read the Constitution further. He might want to support artists more. He might want to create diversity and enhance it more, and project the image that what you are doing as a state officer is building Kenya, not destroying Kenya and making it look so hostile and forbidding for artists.
Yes.
When you invite a CEO of a state corporation, please let's take advantage and expound on the mandate of government.
Yes,
and not deal with mundane, trivial issues. It's disappointing.
I'm particularly concerned with going back to that piece of
otherwise I don't know even what I'm dealing with now. Yeah, I dealt with audit, I mean, it's nonsensical, complete buffoonery. For lack of a better word. No, let me talk. I'm the one.
Okay.
We can't come here. You should have told me we are discussing audit. I would have come with it. Every public organization is on, including yours.
Yes.
If she has an organization of whatever shade, it's entitled. And if you had told me it was about KFCB audit, I wouldn't be answering her. You publicly stated what we were coming to discuss. So let's stick there. Let's set that record straight and respect each other. Otherwise, I will be happy to go and sleep. And if that is not respected, I will walk out of your studio. We can't come here to show disrespect. These are young people. I'm for 50 years. So I'll not come to a studio at night to quarrel with Brenda and this gentleman. If they have no respect, please educate them that it begins from that bad manners. That kind of talk. You don't know about his academic qualification. That cannot be the case. And next time you call me, you'll have to call probably the other MDs or CEOs.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
So let me answer the question.
Yes.
I will not deal with audit queries because I was not informed. But there are general audit queries everywhere, including in State House. There's no place without audit. It's about government money that you are given to spend within certain parameters. And I'll tell you, in my time at KFCB, the last 3 years, there are audit queries, but the queries are there to be answered. When you get
Was
an
it audit about
qualified...
the finances or audit about...
An audit is
Let me
general,
tell
not
you,
just
the
about
queries...
finances.
No, stop going
Also
back to her. Let me
Okay,
answer.
yeah.
She explained, and even the figures. Audit queries are normal in government institutions, okay? Auditors come. I had the auditors, external auditors in my office for the last 10 days. And they are given space. And they approach every department and they explain. And they are asked questions. And then they give me, as a CEO, what they call statement, letter or management letter that requires me to answer those issues. Now, if you pick the management letter and you bring it to a TV station, how do I deal with you? Okay, that's number one. Number two, the audit queries that I have actually are long before I joined KFCB. The issues I'm dealing with, and some of them can be explained, including the money she's talking about. Some of them deal with like classification stickers, okay, that we printed and they were overtaken. You know, they were to be affixed on the DVDs. And they were just to show that this content has been classified by the board. Within 2 years, the technology changed, and therefore, some of them could not be used as we intended. Now there's a query. It's a very easy thing. You write to the cabinet secretary and say, these things have been overtaken by technology. Let us either dispose them or find another way. So there are really non-issues. I can tell you we operate in a very open way. We believe in what we say. And we're not going to come here and tell Brenda to uphold moral standards when we are not upholding them. And I mean, I've just given you an example of that, that thing that was circulating on social media. I think you should cut me some slack when I say we preach water and drink water, not wine. And we do it so seriously that you cannot cast a stone. If there is a query, we can answer. We take responsibility for actions that we have been involved in. And as far as this addict of this musician is concerned, Ken, let us just look at it realistically.
She's just one among many examples.
She's not the only one. Yes, I was coming to that because Eric thinks it's men against women, or it is Mutua.
I said it's a reflection
of the male dominance. Yeah.
Like
I can tell you far from me.
Ezekiel, we have been socialized in a very patriarchal society.
Yes, but that's not where we are coming from.
We have problems with how we view women as men in this society. We have problems on how women are treated in this society. And for me to say that what you did is an indicator or a reflection of that, I'm not saying it's...
I think it's true, and I wanted, just before Brenda comes in, I think what he's saying...
That was within the general frame of me saying that what you're doing, Mr. Ezekiel, might be ultra-biased, might be out.
Let's not be hypothetical. Let's say this. I understand that narrative of the way we have been socialized. But it's not that we use. We don't use...
So what you're
doing, use the law.
You're using state power to express your private opinion, which is very biased. Very biased. You're abusing the law and riding on the cloak and the legitimacy that you're given.
We have not arrested anyone against the law.
But look at what you're doing. It's against Article 33.
What
you're
exactly?
Inciting hatred and vilifying akothe. You've been vilifying homosexuals. You've been vilifying lesbians. You've been creating a very hostile society. Minority and artists who have minority ways of expressing.
I think that's a general comment.
Yeah.
If that's a very general one. If we were specific to the instances, I'll go with that, and I'd want him to answer that, right? If we were. But what's your question, Brenda?
So of course, it's addressed to Dr. Mutua. I'm sure we all remember a point at which, I think it was some 3-4 weeks back, in which a young woman sent an anonymous message to a Telegram group alleging that 2 gospel artists raped her and infected her with STIs. Yes. And these 2 gospel artists actually posted on Instagram and I think their respective Facebook pages in a manner as to suggest that they acknowledged that they were guilty. So they came forward and they said that, we have fallen, we have sinned, we are talking to God or something like that. But I remember Dr. Mutua's silence at that time, because if it is about morality, if it is about art, I would have expected that Dr. Mutua would have been the first person to come out, because if you are going to be self-appointed moral policeman, it must be unequivocal, it must be at all times. But his silence was loud. His silence was
and
extremely
rightly
loud.
so, Ken. You know why?
Yeah.
I had that story, and I got a lot of complaints, even on my inbox and so on. People thought we should react. We weigh what we do, because we looked at that issue. These people were being accused of inappropriate conduct was not in line with our law. It's not our mandate to regulate who has done those kind of things.
No, but
If
you
they
are
were
speaking
doing
about
it-
morality.
No, let me put it in context. Because the law that we use is called films and stage plays.
Yes.
So my
to
mandate goes
22.
to regulation of films, TV programs, theaters, cinematographic events, and stage performances. Now, what Akothee did was a stage performance. If this artist you're talking about did what they were accused of doing on stage or in a public space.
But I'll challenge that and say that you started by saying your opening statement was about morality.
No, that's a general statement.
Do we suspend? Yeah. Do we suspend our exactly? Do we suspend our morals when it's sometimes we
But
say
I
that
think
this
he was explaining why
I
he
understand.
didn't.
No,
Yes.
we have to accept, Ken, that this is selective application of one's own professed
Not,
standards.
not
I
quite. Can I
can
clarify?
you finish your explanation?
Brenda, if that happened on stage or in a theater, our law would apply. Because look at it this way: what would I have used, for example, even in the case of Corey or the women who have been murdered? Sympathetic as I would be, like any other Kenyan, it's not my mandate. There's a police to do that. Every government agency has its own mandate. What I'm talking about morality, where morality comes in line with my work, is the impact or the effect of harmful content or harmful behavior by artists on stage or when they are performing to the public. And this is the reason, Brenda, because public performers don't do it for themselves. Journalists do not report for themselves. So what we exist to do as KFCB is to protect the consumers of what you do. And there is a law meant by Parliament called films and stage plays. So it has two limbs. And a lot of people don't know this other one of stage plays. So when we come in, people think it's morality. No, there are clear rules on what you can do on stage.
But Ken, did he not just speak about morality?
Yes, I'm still speaking about it, but in
Yes.
general
But in
sense to
relation
say
to-
that what content we consume has influence on our morality.
How does this relate to the lions you're commenting about, who you said need
The
to
gay
be
lions?
cancelled? Yes. How does this relate to billboards that you'd want to control?
How does
Can
this
I answer
relate
that?
to
Anyway,
the Coca-Cola advertisement?
May I
Not
say,
Coca-Cola, the
may I
trust
say-
one.
May I
and
say
Durex.
that
yes,
I
Eric.
think we are focusing too much on his work as a person, and we came here to discuss other general issues.
But you're the one who
beyond
brought
that.
it. Can I answer?
You're
You
the
brought
one
it
who
and Brenda
you
brought
made,
it up.
you made a very, very powerful opening statement
Which is?
about your work and the successes and impact that you've had
Absolutely.
at KFCB, explaining
Is that
the
in
mandate.
doubt?
That is not in doubt. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm saying I think we've dwelled so much on your work and your explanation as to why you should be reappointed. But now can we move on to something else?
Okay. Have you adequately answered? Because I want that all out of the way with it.
It's
The
very,
reason why
it's
you
very
get
important
involved
for
in
them to know
Yes.
every state agency is given a mandate. And that mandate has a bearing on the national development. And that's why I linked what we do and the issues of the effects of content on shaping values and opinions and the character of our children particularly to the national development. Because, Ken, research has shown clearly that, for instance, children who are exposed continually to, for example, violent content, there's a likelihood that they will become violent. Now, if children become violent, I mean, that becomes another problem to the country because we are spending money in preserving law and order. And we are saying if all of us were disciplined, we had a sense of right and wrong, and the media portrayed or set the right agenda, and all of us respect our space, whether we are actors or we are journalists or we are government officials, we will have a better country. That's why I talked about setting the moral foundation as the basis for progress.
Okay.
As human beings.
Okay.
No one is disputing all that about violence being something that we should not expose our children to in the content. But people have issues on how selectively, and I do have an issue on how selectively
In what instance?
you apply
You
your
asked
money.
me, I'm here.
The poor
That's it.
lions who are making love.
Can
you
I answer
condemn
that?
them.
Can I answer that? Please
the-
allow me to answer that. It's
let me
the third
finish.
time you are mentioning
See,
it.
You told me to give you
Yes,
time, so
yes.
let me speak. The brilliant film, Rafiki, the way you create a lot of roadblocks on their way to getting it shown. Stories of Our Lives, the creation by the Nest Collective. Brilliant film. You created roadblocks. Kenyans cannot access such content. It's content created by Kenyans, for Kenyans, to reflect what diverse a culture we have, but you're not letting all these stories of love be accessed by the public. So the reason I'm saying that you're being selective is that you are selecting what content the public, the democratic public, the public discourse can use to engage in public discourse. So you're diluting and hijacking the market of ideas by only having a slanted conversation where you are leading an anti-gay chant with the full authority of state appointment behind you.
And can I also have a point to make about especially the laws within which this framework operates, yeah? So I want to remind us that the penal code as we have it is a colonial relic that was created to oppress Kenyans, yeah? Black Kenyans living in this country, which is why a crime like loitering can still exist. Ask yourself why you should be arrested for crossing the road at night under the, you know, auspices of loitering. Yeah, this is an anti-black law. It is a colonial law. In the same instance, I want to remind everybody listening that the KFCB, for example, was created by an act that was passed in 1962, just before independence. This was one of the actions that they took because film, as we know, film and especially stage plays, we know people like Ngugi wa Thiong'o have been jailed because of their work, portraying a black freedom that was, you know, incongruent with what Kenyans imagined at that time, were so powerful. These laws oppress us. How can we be living in a free Kenya with this constitution that is supposed to free us, with laws that oppress? How can we be living in an environment that doesn't trust Kenyans to know what's good for them? For example, the people consuming, I'll use this example, Akothe's performance. They were adults, I would imagine. That show was at night. I'm sure I would hope they had an age limit for the people coming in. When we rate the mandate that Dr. Mutua's organization has to classify, to rate, to advise, when it rates a film as PG-18, I would imagine that the guardian or the parent of the child in question would prevent them to watch, because that is the custodial role.
So
it is the role.
They don't do it.
No. Their role is to we are just operating within the law. Their role is to review, to rate, and to advise. So when you ask them, you know, to move past that, and we are also ceding our role as the guardians and custodians of children.
How would you have handled this if you're sitting on a seat as Dr. Mutua?
How would I have handled?
Seen the photographs that were put on social media the next day after the performance.
First of all, I would know the laws under which my organization
and this is not
operates.
About Akode, I'd like
yes,
you
yes.
understand. It's general.
Yes, I would know the law under which my organization operates. I would know the limits of my mandate, and I would issue an advised opinion based on that. There are limits, there are censures, there are opportunities you can take as opposed to ad hominem attacks, which include calling this woman all kinds of names on social media. This is not the behavior we expect of state officials. State officials are paid by citizens. They are accountable to the citizenry of Kenya. They are accountable to this constitution.
Okay.
He is operating outside the framework of the law. Simple.
We need to take a break, but I'll give Dr. a minute or so to...
Yeah, now I don't even know what to answer. So what is the question?
The question is overreaching. They're thinking you...
No, not quite. This country is so democratic. This constitution she's holding is so powerful. If you actually believed in it, you wouldn't have a complaint here. You'd be going to court. Yeah, I'm serious. I mean, unless you don't believe in it. You have a constitution that gives you the guarantee of freedom of expression, freedom of the media, access to information. Use it. Wanuri used it. She's in court. The court will rule. When they ruled that we will have to allow that film to be exhibited for 7 days, we obeyed the law, the court order. So
we must overreach at every point and then we have to go to court? Is that what we are saying? There must be overreach and then we have to protest? I just want to clarify.
From where he says...
What I'm saying is this. If the police break the law,
do you want me to take you
people
to court?
go to court. Yeah, why not?
Okay, thank
people
you.
have gone to court. Yeah, I've also taken people to court. Okay, that's what you do. That's where we find redress if I have an issue. But this is what I'm saying, that government regulates human behavior. Okay?
No.
Every institute... Oh, yes, that's what we do.
Sir, please show me where.
This is what we do. That constitution is actually to make us orderly. It's for us to choose to say this is where we are going to be governed. Okay. Allow me to say, because you mentioned the constitution and you mentioned the values, and I wanted to tell you that this constitution is the principle. Yes. There are laws to operationalize the constitution. One of them is Films and Stage Plays Act. It's not here.
Which I'm well versed in.
It is not. It's not in the constitution.
When we started.
It's not in the constitution.
That is true.
But is constitutional. We have even gone to court with Kenya breweries and other organizations when we banned advertising of beer over the watershed period. And we took them to court. We obtained injunction. They could not air for 14 days. They decided to go to the Constitutional Court before Justice Mativo to seek the interpretation on the constitutionality of KFCB. And for 6 months, we canvassed our case. And before Justice Mativo, it was ruled that KFCB is constitutionally constituted, that it has a role to play, and it is ought to be allowed to operate. And actually, that ruling,
the existence of
Brenda,
the organization.
yes, that ruling is a reference point.
Yes.
Is a reference point for constitutionality, if nothing else. Okay. But allow me to say that, Brenda, it's not every law that is here. What happens? The Constitution is the
broader framework.
Yeah, it's a broader framework.
all
But
the
then
laws must.
Parliament makes laws.
No, but
then don't blame
this
me.
is the most supreme law.
This is what happens, Brenda. If there is a problem with our law, tell Parliament to change it. Okay? Because I implement the law I've been given. I don't make laws.
Okay.
I enforce the law that I've been given by
Now they're
Parliament.
running around.
I even wanted to do feedback, but we're out of time for our first break. But the conversation continues right here with Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, David, and of course Brenda. We are back in a moment. And welcome back to Sidebar. Tonight we're talking about the society, we're talking about the religion, and we are talking about the state. And the question we are asking is, who is policing the public out there? Who is supposed to do it? And I'd like to engage my panel now on a number of other issues, specifically if we have left the raising of our children to other people. I'd like to begin also by asking, before we go to that, asking this question. Someone is asking me, Daktari, Akode performed past the period that is regulated, right? And we also have the children encountering the pictures on social media. So the question is, who regulates, and why do you come in past the time that you regulate? What was that?
Let me tell you,
pushed
public
Yes.
performances have no watershed. Okay?
Have no watershed?
No, there's no watershed for
Okay.
public performance.
Okay.
You just behave within certain parameters of common decency. Because there's no watershed. I mean, you perform and you're performed. It's not like a TV program where we can say children have gone to sleep. To the extent that there's a possibility of children watching, to the extent that you're performing in public space. You see, if it was a party in a house, this debate would be very different, and I would not comment. It's not the first time that lady has commented, and it's very unfortunate that we are dwelling on one individual.
The question,
Akoda could
yes.
actually be better than many other people that we are not discussing.
And we've seen them.
So we are
Yes,
making
we've seen
up, the debate.
Because it's the most current.
It's the most current, but it's not the most bizarre issue, the instance that we have seen.
Okay.
But the thing is, the government regulates the public performances.
Okay, period.
Okay?
Yes.
Discourse, even choirs, you can't just go. Performances, comedy, whatever you do in public, you can't just go and undress and do whatever you want to do besides and is in the public space. But if you do it in your private house or in your home or in your bedroom, we will not come in. The government has no business invading that private space. And I think that's where I agree with Brenda in respect to the Constitution. When you come to perform in the public, we want to tell musicians that will get you arrested if you do those kind of things.
Okay.
Just restrain them to your privacy. When you come to the public space, I've said, just like on the road, the car is yours, you paid for it, you have a logbook, you have a driving license, but you not drive the way you want just because the car is yours. The government regulates human behavior on the road to tell this one, don't do this way, don't veer this way, don't obstruct the other motorists. And that's what we are doing to say there are Kenyans in this country, Ken, who are very conservative. This is a very religious country, by the way. And there are Kenyans who hate that behavior. There are Kenyans who also rise and they ask, what are you doing? Why is the government allowing this sort of immorality, this kind of obscene content? What do you do with them if you're only going to listen to a few characters who are perverts or who want to get obsessed with that kind of perversion? We are saying, just stick to the rules. And if there's a problem with the law that we apply, change the law.
Okay, so have we left our responsibilities as parents, Brenda? Are we to blame for what's happening outside here?
So first of all, I'll offer a qualification and say that I'm not a parent. But I want to respond to Dr. Mutua's comments because it becomes a very slippery slope once we decide that we are going to say something is wrong or indecent, and it's not. Because there's nowhere actually within this Constitution or even the Film and Stage Plays Act, which is Cap 222, that clarifies what qualifies as indecent or immoral. So it becomes a subjective matter. And the problem with subjectivity, or things as I see them versus things as you see them, is that it offers an opportunity for people to overstep and to use their powers in ways that punish or
going back
oppress.
to that discussion
I have to I have to respond.
she's
I
very right.
actually have to respond.
She's right, but she's coming back to
but
Only that you must test it against the law.
I saw a question on Twitter which I found it was funny the first time I read it, but I actually understood where the person was coming from. They addressed Dr. Mutua and asked him, do we have a specific radius towards which, within which people can open their legs in public? Because that's where we are going. Once you say this, it's like not more than 45 degrees. You see it's absurd, right? You see it's absurd. You see that you can't do this. You can't. You can only provide guidelines, and then you can create a space within which dialogue can happen. But dialogue should happen, must happen.
Okay.
And even by censoring, which KFCB has been leading, a lot of censorship campaigns, you don't even allow that conversation to happen. You don't allow people as citizens, people who have self-determination, to be able to say that this is what I think, this is what he thinks, this is what they think.
Okay,
Yeah?
I'll bring Eric, but the question I asked you, a lot of people think you haven't answered adequately. What would you do if you were in Dr. Mutua's position?
What would I do?
Yes, what would you do?
My job.
Yes.
I would do my job.
And if you think that's what you ought to do, what he's doing, would you
No, I
stand by?
wouldn't. I would not. I would not. I don't believe in moral policing as a solution to societal problems.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Same question, what would you do? I need to get her out of this discussion and go back to my question. But what would you do?
I would regulate the content and advise how to abide by the law, but I wouldn't go through down the path of censorship.
Okay, could I respond?
And then in response to your second question on whether we have left parenting to the law or what should guide
To the
society,
state and all that.
My understanding has always been that parenting and families and churches do a very critical job in building our society, in informing our sense of right, wrong, good. Sometimes we have instances where the law draws from moral underpinnings that have existed in society for a long time. So parents complement the work of the law. Churches complement the work of the government in providing for the state and for the people in that state. I think that the state has not failed in Kenya, the church has not failed in Kenya, parents have not failed in Kenya. The violence we're seeing against women has been ongoing for such a long time. It's just that right now, it's really being spotlighted. The issues of public performances that would scandalize people who are conservative, and they have the right to be conservative because that's their conviction and their conscience. But at the same time, we live under the rule of law, in a democracy that recognizes that all these pluralities will be there. But should there be any contest or frictions, then there is a certain criteria laid down by the law on what should be done to resolve such contradictions. And that's where he comes in as a state officer who has all that power under the law and who's also mandated in Article 2021 of the Constitution. When he's interpreting, and also in Article 22 of the Constitution, he's interpreting whatever part of the Constitution. Maybe someone's freedom to express themselves as an artist. You should be guided by values that underlie an open and democratic society, guided by human dignity, equity, equality, and freedom. Values that underlie an open and democratic society. I wouldn't think that his censorship goes in line to values that underlie an open and democratic society, as the Constitution says.
But the laws of the land.
But then the Constitution is a supreme law of the land.
Okay.
I do recognize.
I think I hear what Eric is saying.
I do recognize. Let me finish and then I donate my time to you. I do recognize that he has statutory power in discharging his mandate as a state officer. But then the Constitution also recognizes that at some point state officers will exceed their powers. They will be tempted to think, for example, that controlling things like in social media is within their powers. They'll be sometimes tempted to think that prescribing a certain moral doctrine or prescribing a certain interpretation of morality is the correct way to go. So the Constitution recognizes that hazard and provides a procedure to cure that. As the CEO of, I'll change the title now, of the KFCB is saying that if you are aggrieved, Article 22 of the Constitution says you have the right to go to court. So this is the correct framework. The church hasn't failed, families haven't failed. I think what we need to do is abide more by the rule of law, uphold our Constitution more. If we implement it more, as Article 19 says, if we make it the basic framework of our socio-economic and political policies, I think we'll be much more...
5 minutes of a lecture.
We donated time to you, Ezekiel, to explain your work. Let us also speak about the issues that are facing...
Have you made your point?
To respond,
I have made
because
my
first
point.
of all, he's talked about censorship. We are no longer a censorship board. We used to be. We are now called Kenya Film Classification Board. Okay? We are established under CAP 222. So CAP 222 gives provisions to what we can do. So if it says we ban, we ban. And that's what I'm saying. I'm inviting you. If there's a challenge or a problem with that law, let us participate. Let us go through it together. A member of the public can initiate, or you can tell you're a member of parliament. That's why we are governed by a set of rules, and we have a process of democracy where we go to elections every 5 years. We elect members of parliament who make laws on your behalf, and then they give them to institutions like KFCB to enforce. So I want you to know where the problem is. You cannot solve that problem by going to attack those government institutions. You need to look at that law and know that you are empowered by both the Constitution and the law to be able to initiate change yourself. So lamenting and giving defeatist statement or even refusing to agree to objective truth makes me very sad, because it speaks to the bigger issue of how do we move forward as a country. And how to move forward is not the blame game. It's not to come to a studio bitter and hungry, and you are bitter with Mutua, you are packaging yourself, what you will say that will make him so annoyed, and you're wasting very valuable time to get information from me in terms of how to operate, and yet I serve you. I am paid salary by your money. And whether you like me or not, I'll still earn my salary tomorrow. And so use my time as a public official so that you ask me, how do you regulate? And I would be showing you, this is a law that allows us to ban. And if there's no law that allows us to ban, you can go to court and stop us from banning. And I used to Wanuri, a classic example of a person who felt aggrieved by our classification and went to court. Some of the films that you have mentioned, Chief, they are not, and this matter is not personal, they were even not banned during my time. You know, Stories of Our Lives, The Wolf of the Wall Street, you know, 50 Shades of Grey. It was kitambo sana. You need to update yourself.
I haven't mentioned all those.
Yeah, so the thing is, as a country, we have a problem. That problem is not a problem of the government or the media or the church or the parents. All of us have a role. And it's absurd when government institutions that are enforcing that law, then the members who pay for them to exist don't see sense, and they don't want to go to court or even go to their members of parliament to tell them to change the law. You see, this lynching, this mob lynching of public officials or members of parliament does not help, because at the end of the day, we are in democracy, and you are going to live with your bitterness until you subscribe to a process that regulates our human behavior.
Dr. perhaps I should ask you a question that I should have asked from the beginning before I bring Brenda in. Do you think, as Dr. Ezekiel Mutua, you are overstepping, or do you think you're within
I cannot. There's no room for any, let alone me, even the president. Look at the Computer Misuse and Cybercrime Bill. The president signed it into law. A section, I think it was Article 19 and other people, went to court, and certain portions of that law were suspended.
Okay.
I mean, so why are you not using that? If people can stop a law that has been signed by the president from being enforced, if people can stop ministers from carrying out certain activities, if Omtata can go to court and suspend a government process, what are we discussing here? Why are you making me sound more powerful than I am?
Okay.
Because you are personalizing an issue and making me look more popular than I am. I don't have those powers.
Okay.
If the court told me, like they did in the case of Rafiki, that will allow this film to be shown for 7 days to qualify for nomination for the Oscars, we allowed it. After 7 days, the ban resumed. That's how civilized organizations exist.
Okay, Brenda.
I think it's a very cruel joke and bad faith argument to assume that just because the courts exist, or just because we have this law, or just because XYZ happens, that everybody has access. Yeah, it's not an equitable assumption, and it is actually a very
But Omtata can represent you.
No. Let me finish, sir. We have let you speak. So. It is a very bad faith argument, because we live in a Kenya where we know corruption is rife. We live in a Kenya where we know we vote out over 65% of our representatives every election because of failure to perform. We live in this country. To claim otherwise would be to be a barefaced liar. So when Dr. Mutua says that anybody can go to court, we know that is not true. Cases in Kenya take regularly 3, 5, 10 years. We know people who have wasted their entire family fortunes or their entire personal fortunes pursuing justice. So to claim that any Kenyan can walk into court is a lie. Lawyer fees or legal fees through the roof.
No, but the same law you're using allows anyone to go to
I understand,
court.
but to say it, I'm pointing out, just because it's allowed or just because it's possible doesn't mean it's an accessible option to everybody. So we would expect, and I know I have referred to this constitution before, but I'm going to speak from chapter 6, which is on leadership and integrity, which applies to state officers like Dr. Mutua. Leaders must demonstrate respect for the people. I don't think that has happened here. Bring honor to the nation and dignity to the office, promote public confidence, and so on. This is the most quote-unquote speculative fiction chapter of this constitution, because since we passed it, very few people, if at all, passed this. But for Dr. Mutua to say that he operates within the framework of this law and has never overstepped, I would believe that multiple people would argue with that. And overreach has happened, which is why people would go to court in the first place. So let us not mock Kenyans. Let us not disparage people by saying anybody can walk. It's like what Martin Luther King Jr. said. It's like telling a man with no boots to pull himself up by the bootstraps.
So
it's
do you believe in this constitution?
Why did I carry it? Where is yours? You didn't even come with yours.
It gives you certain powers, inherent powers, you as Brenda, that you can use. And I can tell you, there are some rights there you can exploit without having to pay. You can go to court, prove that you have a case, and you should be able to file your case. Particularly against public officials, really. Really? Don't create monsters that
As
don't
an
exist.
example of that,
Yeah.
what we've done is that we've gone to court and challenged the law that you always cite when speaking about LGBT persons in Kenya. Section 162 of the Penal Code.
Yes.
To say that that law is
Absolutely, and
in
we're waiting for the
contravention,
ruling.
on a contravention of the Constitution.
We are waiting
and
for the ruling.
Yeah, and
There's
we're waiting
nothing you
for the
can
ruling.
canvass here that will help you.
So there are a lot of illustrations where people have gone to court, but not
So why are you
everyone-
complaining about
not
this one?
everyone, Skiza, brother, not everyone has all the money and...
But
the
you can
ci-
even
the
go to
civic-
court for free.
But the civic education amongst Kenyans is not as...
But
you
you
would think.
sound educated, or at least from the look of
Because
it.
I've had the privilege of my parents taking me to school. What
So
I'm
why
saying
don't you
is
make use of the
not
education
every
He
Kenyan...
has
the
done
money your
so
parents
many
paid?
Sasa,
times.
who you
Eric has
attacking
been
Yonge?
to
I'm
court.
saying this.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Eric
this.
has been
No,
to court
you
multiple
have
times.
you have to clear the contradictions.
All
You are
right.
educated. Make use of your education.
I have
That's
gone
what I'm
to-
doing.
I have gone
So-
to court severally.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
I have gone to court
Have
to
you
challenge-
won any case?
Yes,
Which one?
to register the National Gay Lesbian Human Rights Commission. And the court said that...
And you are proud of it.
The court said that sexual orientation is protected in the Constitution from non-discrimination.
Yes, and I agree with
There's
you.
another case about two of our clients who were subjected to forced anal examination. I can tell you the story if you're interested. They were
You have done that?
Yes, they were taken to a government hospital because
Good.
of their sexual orientation.
Why are you having a problem with this one? Why don't you go and
Because-
challenge Cap 222?
They were told they were taken to a public hospital. They were told remove all your clothes because we suspect you're homosexual.
I was very sympathetic and
Lie
I
on
actually
this table,
agreed with-
lift your legs up.
No, that
and
was
cough.
wrong.
When they were coughing, the doctors were fingering them
That was
in
wrong,
the anus
Eric.
and inserting metallic objects. Sasa, when you want to discuss about your work, it can sound very political. But you know, sometimes, Ezekiel, things that really get me is that people are suffering as we politicize this issue, as we debate it and make it sound as if it's a power game, you know? But this is people's lives. You might not be gay, but there are a lot of people affected directly. You might not be an artist who is making art which people don't understand, but there are artists who are impacted.
So we're suffering, the gay people.
Multiple people.
Could I put it
Kwani
this way?
unisikizi?
Because
Are you not listening
the
to me?
issue, like the issue you have said,
Yeah.
and actually, if you look at my public comments, I supported that case. I didn't know you were involved.
You supported
Oh
that
yes,
case? Which
I did.
case?
I did. The one where the one you've talked about in the
Forced
cost.
anal examination?
Yes. I was with you.
You
You know why?
support what
Yes,
you
I'm
support?
on public. I'm in public. I can go back and send the
What
my
was your
post.
What was your support?
No, I was it. There must be a clear distinction between the rights of a gay person as an individual, their dignity to human life, and the way they should be respected, and their behavior in the public place, or the content they produce. And to that extent, you are right. And I've said publicly that if a gay person applied for a job at Kenya Film Classification Board, and they are qualified like you claim
how
you
would
are,
you know they are
No,
gay?
listen. No, they can say it. And they come and say, I am gay. But they have qualified, they have gone through the process. They will not be discriminated or marginalized on account of their being gay. And they'll be respected as human beings. However, their mannerisms and what they want to do, just like all of us, will be regulated in line with the law. I think the Pope got it right.
mannerisms?
The Pope said this, that we should love the sinner, but not the sin.
The Pope never
So
said that.
in the case of...
The Pope is not on
The
record as
Pope
having
never
said
said
that.
that.
Really?
Pope Francis or
Okay, I'll
John
give you-
Paul
He's not
II.
on
Which
record as
one?
having said that.
I'll give you that.
Benedict?
No.
I don't want to
Okay,
start
okay,
Googling.
let's
It's not a
stop.
big
Yes,
issue.
yes,
Allow me to cite it.
Yes.
It doesn't matter. Then quote me.
becomes a lie.
Quote me. No, it's my
The
quote
more a
then.
lie is repeated, it becomes truth.
No,
Okay,
quote
we can
Quote me
get over
that
that.
I
We
like.
can get over that, right?
I love the sinner, but not the sin.
Like
Are you
Sasa,
comfortable with that? It is not the Pope.
I'd like to play a soundbite from President Uhuru
And the Pope
Kenyatta.
could be Pope Ezekiel.
I'd like to play a
Not
soundbite
you,
from President Uhuru Kenyatta. Then we can conclude this discussion.
Okay.
One of the major issues, and it's a holdover from sort of colonial Victorian, is the issue of sexual preference in many African countries. In Kenya, to be gay, the LGBT community is illegal. They just want to have equal rights, the same privacy and equality as all other Kenyans do. Is that something that you aspire to for your country?
I want to be very clear. I will not engage in a subject that is of no, it is not of any major importance to the people and the Republic of Kenya. This is not an issue, as you would want to put it, of human rights or this. This is an issue of society. of our own base as a culture, as a people, regardless of which community you come from. This is not acceptable. This is not agreeable. This is not about Uhuru Kenyatta saying yes or no. This is an issue that the people of Kenya themselves, who have bestowed upon themselves a constitution, right, after several years, have clearly stated that this is not a subject that they are willing to engage in, yeah, at this time and moment. In years to come, possibly long after I'm president, who knows? Maybe our society will have reached a stage where those are issues that people are willing, freely and open to discuss. I have to be honest with you. And that is the position that we have always maintained. Those are the laws that we have, and those are laws that are 100% supported by 99% of the Kenyan people, irregardless of where they come from.
Well, I don't know where the head of state got that statistics from, 99.9%. I don't know where he got it from, but this was not the first time. 2015, when Barack Obama was here, I had the privilege of being at State House, and that's one of the questions that he was asked by the foreign media. He stand on it, and he said the same thing. So,
the
because
president is correct, by the way. You
about
know
99?
Let me give you another example. If you want to look at the skiza tunes,
Yeah.
the most popular, out of the top 20 skiza tunes, 18 are gospel. And I'm not saying everybody must sing gospel. What I'm saying is that generally, and use skiza tunes statistics, you can get those ones on your own.
Okay, but even that,
what it
that
means,
would be 80%.
no, I was just trying to justify something, that the president is right. Generally, I told you, Kenyans are very conservative. In our regulation, by the way, we are lumped together with the Middle East and Asian countries that are very conservative. You okay?
Countries, yeah.
I've told you about skiza tunes. Almost 80-something% is gospel. And I'm using that very carefully because I want to prove the point that Kenyans generally want clean content.
Okay.
They don't want dirty music. They don't want dirty films, generally.
But generally, we agree there are people also in the country who like that kind
That's
of
why we are
music.
saying then stick to the law. Stick to the law. We will not abuse the rights of the minority who don't want gospel, who don't want family soaps, or just, you know, things that are just talking about government and so on. We have no problem with that. People don't want about, to hear development stories and stuff like that. They want to hear about scandals and murders and rape and so on. There are people like those, and they're perverts who want to listen to obscene, dirty, vulgar, profane content. They exist. What we are saying is all of us will live in this space, and the only thing that will regulate us is the rule of law.
Okay.
All of us. And if I go against the law, or Brenda goes against the law, we go to court and seek redress.
Okay.
That's how civilized society
The two of them, Daktari, don't really think the court works for everyone in this country.
Why so? And we have this constitution.
Yeah, but they don't.
Why do they carry it if they don't believe in it?
No,
it
not in
gives
the
the citizens of this country certain inalienable rights that they should use to protect themselves.
Let me
and he has
Eric.
said he has successfully executed a few cases successfully in this country that were very controversial, but you have won. And I've told you in one of them, like that mistreatment of those people, I disagreed with the police.
Great, great, Daktari. Eric, I'd like to bring you in that statement from the head of state. It's the second time I was hearing it from the head of state.
Well, he keeps repeating the fact that, or the phrase that it's a non-issue, but
Kenyans are not ready for that discussion right now. That's what he says.
But over and over, he keeps engaging on that issue, responding to it. So it's a contradiction. He makes it an issue, then makes it a non-issue. But my understanding of the non-issue frame, or that the Kenyans are not ready to discuss it, he is in essence leaving the conversation open and allowing society to leave options of exploring under the rule of law, as Ezekiel says, what would be just and fair remedies for persons in the LGBT community who are criminalized right now and who face a lot of violence and discrimination in our society. I think there's another part in the same interview where the president says that he will not allow Kenyans to be subjected to violence just because of their sexual orientation. He says that he believes that everyone is protected equally under the law, and if anyone has any infractions or violations of violence that they suffer, then we have institutions established under our constitution for redress. And that is what we've been doing so far in terms of launching all these cases against violations and violence towards LGBT persons.
Okay. Brenda?
I think to me it's quite tragic that we seem to have a president who is not well versed with the constitution under which he rules or under which he governs, because we don't have rulers. Sorry, this is not a monarchy. Because he says that this is not a human rights issue, but it is. We know that it is. And when he claims that it is a societal issue, yet at the heart of the Kenyan state or the Kenyan nation, the right rests, it's the inalienable individual right? So it's here. And then the sovereign rests with the Kenyan people. So to hear him on a huge platform like CNN with Christiane Amanpour saying such a thing to me is extremely shocking. But then I think it explains very many things about the sort of country we live in, because now it starts to make sense why we have rampant extrajudicial killings, where the president will come and speak very strongly against corruption and nothing happens. Why we can have, for example, this very hilarious thing that came out on the news today that people are claiming they were called by a number that was like, it looked like the president's number, and they were conned. It can only happen in a place like this where we don't understand this document. And it's really sad for me to hear the head of state, who I would imagine would be standing in solidarity with the smallest of us, the most marginalized of us, who would be, because the law exists to protect.
But
basically, wait,
the law exists.
No, wait.
It does not stand
No. But for me, when you say it is not a human rights issue, that for me means that you have abandoned.
Did he say that?
Yes,
No,
you
he
can
didn't say
replay.
that.
No. Please, we can do. No, he also said it's not a human rights issue. It's a societal issue. I was listening, but we can replay it.
Now you qualify.
Yeah.
It's a societal
it's a societal issue.
Qualify,
yes, but then for me, that just leaves me in a very despondent state, because the law exists to protect minorities against the tyranny of the majority. The majority will always be protected by the virtue of them being the majority. And I want to perhaps close with a quote that I really like by Martin Niemöller that says that first they came for the socialists, but I did not speak out because I wasn't a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, but I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, but I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. Injustice anywhere is injustice everywhere. When we refuse to stand for this, for the most marginalized among us, we have already lost.
Okay. Yeah. I'm glad they have a case in court. I'm glad they have a case. But Dr. you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, absolutely. That can, I think generally, let me just touch on the general principle. Until we sort out the issues of moral values in this country, we still have a problem. Even the rights of the marginalized and the rights of minorities will not be respected, because it does not start with the government abuses or the police. It starts with me as an individual, what I do, my sense of right and wrong, how I respect Brenda and respect Eric, and how we can live together in a cohesive society, knowing that we never agree on everything, but still we are Kenyans, we must coexist. And I think that basic principle is not a regulatory issue. And that's where the problem is, that we are looking at the regulatory issue, we are looking at the president, we are looking at the government, and yet even the president has been injected from taking certain measures to stop corruption. He even sacked his own ministers. He's so committed to this. And during that convention, and I wish David was here because he was moderating, Bishop Oginde, the president himself sounded very frustrated with the judiciary, because he's saying, look, people are arrested and they are released because they are enjoying the constitutional provisions, and yet we know for sure people are stealing. And I think that frustration goes to say this, that you're not going to win this war, you're not going to stop the corruption, the killings in our society, the senseless murder and abuse of our women, the marginalization and discrimination against minorities, if you focus on the government, hate the government that you elected through a process, a democratic process, and just get bitter. I would rather we take action. And I'm very happy that you gave me the cases that you have prosecuted. This is a way to go, Brenda and Eric. Let us agree that we are not enemies. You can't come here tonight to fight one another. So now let me finish. It is better when we come and I try to understand you. Where are you coming from? Because there must be a reason why you came. There must be a reason why he called you. You can't be anybody. There must be a reason. Something you are doing that meant Ken think you qualify to be here tonight with a CEO, Brenda. There must be something you're doing. Okay? In that case, therefore, I respect that space. What I'm saying is, let us find out where is the problem at individual level, at family level, at the small groups where we belong, and bring sanity and order. Respect your right, you respect mine. And the people entrusted with running the affairs of the government, please give them space. Otherwise, we'll complain, and we'll whine until cows come home, and nothing will be done. And we'll continue to get our women killed, we'll get to people marginalized. And these things, some of the cases that you are reading in the papers, it's not the government which is killing people. Some of those cases are societal issues. It's a man and his wife. It's a family matter. It is a business gone sour. It's some love triangle. It's not a government issue. And until we address the issue of morality, which you seem so incensed with, then you're going to complain. Ezekiel Mutua will continue to be a CEO. I'll still continue to live. You'll continue to live. But you'll live thinking that the government is against you. Yet it is so tragic for you to think that way. The government cannot be against you. You cannot be paying taxes for me to earn a salary, to fight you. And I think we need to begin from there. Okay. So let us all say, morality matters.
Okay.
Moral issues are important.
I'd like to ask my last question.
No, I think I enjoy the version of Kenya that Dr. Mutua lives in, and I really would like to live there. It doesn't match the one I live in. Continue, Ken.
All right. First, to get this out of the way, I think the Pope said, know the difference between sin and the sinner. Distinguish.
She was saying, and you never said anything like that.
No, he said, know the difference between the sin and the sinner. The act and the person.
No, exactly. Love his was
I said I love the sinner,
yeah,
but not the sin.
That was your personal quote.
It's almost paraphrasing.
Okay.
I mean, these guys, did you go to school?
May I say,
there's such a thing.
We need to move on.
Paraphrasing.
I am very happy to be hanging out with the CEO of the Kenya.
Don't be sarcastic.
No, I am not. I am not.
There's nothing to be sarcastic about. And whether you're sarcastic or not, I'm still.
And I wish you all the best in your mandate
yeah.
and in your future endeavors. And I hope that we are able to work together to build a very vibrant, competitive country in the world.
Amen.
Without
now that is out of the way, I'd like to talk about, I have a few minutes of the clock, about the societal problem that is the killing of women in this society. In the last 2 months or 1 month alone. Let's even take it to last year when Sharon Otieno was first murdered. And even before then, the lady who was found with Musando. I mean, it's absurd. I don't know what's happening. I don't know your thoughts on this. Because tomorrow we might wake up and be
to another story.
So actually, Eric began very well by touching on this as a problem of existing or living in a patriarchal society. And to tie this back in with the comments I had begun to make on moral policing, the thing about moral policing or any kind of policing is that it tends to be subjected on people who are minorities. So in this case, it would be women. In other cases, it would be LGBTQI people. But then we decide who gets to exist in public, who doesn't get to exist in public, who gets to exist in political spaces, and who doesn't. And we see it when, for example, you'll talk to people like the Nairobi woman representative, Esther Passaris, who will tell you about how difficult it is to campaign for women. Yeah, we have had that conversation. This is a problem of people deciding that they have power over others, which is why it always comes back down to challenging this very oppressive mindset, a patriarchal mindset that deems women as being less than. So whenever women overstep their imagined societal bounds, they are violated, and in many cases they are also killed, which is what tends to happen. So when someone wants to punish Ken, for example, they will look for, in many cases, they will look for a woman who is related to you or a woman that you might care for, and they would attack her or they would kill her, which is what happened in the case of, for example, Chris Msando, yeah? He was killed, and he was killed with a young woman. It is not known what his exact relationship with her was, but a lot of the crimes against women tend to happen as a result of them being viewed as having overstepped. So when we come back down to this, when we say that we are going to police morals, I hope we know that we are enforcing this framework, because it means that if I see a woman walking in town, which is what happened when we had the My Dress, My Choice march in 2014, there's one woman who, she had asked someone who had bought boiled eggs from her to pay her the money, and she was stripped. So it becomes a form of retribution, a very twisted form of retribution against perceived slights by women. Okay. That's where it comes from.
Okay.
I think we have a structural issue that is not only socialized, but also ingrained in our legal ecosystem. The position of men and women in our society is very differential. And I know the Constitution has tried to cure that in Article 27 by making sure that men and women have equal access to rights, especially in marriages, before and after marriages. And courts have been very robust in enforcing those constitutional provisions. But to the bigger problem of violence, We get reports which are in the public domain that 1 in every 3 women have suffered sexual assault, at least in their lifetime. We get statistics generated year in, year out by civil society organizations and by government departments and by the Kenya Police on statistics that are gendered towards violence that is gendered towards women. The response by the state, there have been prosecutions, but well, it's still, what would I say, we can do better. We have had progress, for example, with the case of those touts who assaulted a woman in the Kasarani route and used a bottle to assault her, and then there was a response by the legislature in enforcing stricter penalties for men who engage in sexual assault because of someone's dressing. So there's still a lot to be done. But I would want tonight, men, especially in this country, to recognize that there's a lot that they need to learn, to relearn, and still relearn more in terms of how we've been socialized to gender everything in our society. Look at simple words like how we call women in our street language. It's a very, very derogatory, ownership-based kind of language. So it's the simple things. We don't really have to wait for the state to move or the legislature to move. Those social little spaces where we condone jokes that derogate women, those tiny social spaces with our friends where we make jokes that debase women and celebrate violence and make rape jokes or date rape jokes. Those situations that we can slowly but surely stand up and say this is wrong, where we can, I don't know how I can put it, but it starts with every one of us, and especially the men who are the main perpetrators of this violence.
Okay. Ken, it boils down to what I do and what KFCB is established to do. No. Why would you find offense with that?
No, it's just...
Yeah, like I said, I'm a public official. I'm here. You're paying me to be here. Who is paying you to be here? You see, I am earning my salary for being here, so, and it's your money. If I were you, I would utilize that money and take care of the guy I pay and allow him space to explain himself. Let me come to the point. Yes. Boils down to the way we are socialized and how we socialized. It's a cultural issue. Yeah, there's a way societies have behaved. Some of the practices, cultural practices, are primitive, and we need to speak out against them. Practices that degrade women, practices that, and I agree with Eric, cultural practices that have no time in our day and age, that marginalize women, that think the space of women is in the kitchen. And those things are perpetuated either through music, through art, through the media. I'm serious. I mean, that's what I do. I'm an expert in this, my friend. By the way, I worked here for 9 years, and I rose through the ranks. I am not coming from the streets.
Go ahead and
yes. My up to PhD level, my studies, communication studies. Please respect. I have something to offer you.
I do.
Yeah. So stop.
Stop defending yourself to me, explaining yourself to me.
So this is the point that process of socialization is greatly influenced by content that we consume. And if you look at societies that are very violent, if you look at groups, including terror groups, extreme terrorism, radicalization is a process that goes through, ideological process that impacts on the mind. That's why I'm very careful that kind of behavior artists expose or media, because the media shapes opinions. The media influences behavior. And what people watch, particularly impressionable minds like the children, has a bearing on how they grow up. So if you grew up watching your father beating your mom, chances are that you think it's normal. You are conditioned to think it's okay. The kids grow to become those kind of violent guys. And if you do music or films that project women that way, then it is normalizing it. It's desensitizing him to the feeling that this is a woman, she's my mother, she's my sister, she's my daughter, I should respect her. So this is where it begins. What kind of content are we consuming? And we can go to the basics and say, we are not, we have our own culture, and that culture as a way in which we should use it as a basis to agree to live better as a people, okay? That content must not condition us to think outside the cultural ideological underpinnings. Because if we do so and allow the culture of anything goes, teach our kids that betting is the way to go, they are quick fixes to life, that you can bet 50 shillings and you become 200 million rich man. These kind of things, this kind of music where people are gyrating in public space, this kind of immoral, obscene content has an influence ultimately on the kids, the minds of the kids, and how we behave. And that's why we are saying, let us address the process of how we want to be governed and come up with the laws. Elect. You should be very careful, Eric, when the elections come, to ensure that you go and queue and vote.
Are you running in the next election?
Well, it is too early for me to decide. Right now, I'm the CEO of Kenya Film Classification Board.
Are you considering it?
I have been running since 1992 when I was a student leader at KU. So don't you worry. And I was elected here by all the journalists countrywide in this media house as the Secretary General of Kenya Union of Journalists. They came from everywhere and elected me and opposed. So I know politics. You see now, childish. Let me ask you, Ken. Let me ask you, Ken. Let me talk to Ken. Let me ask Ken. Yes. In your wisdom or thereof, you paired me with these guys, and you thought it is fair.
You see, it goes to.
No, I'm asking a question. In your wisdom, you see, this is that's okay for someone to come and say that.
No,
it's not something.
Yeah, stop him.
It's not something that we wanted to discuss, because if I wanted to raise such a question, I would have raised it.
Exactly.
Out of those, but it's not one of the things we're discussing.
So we must agree that the media can condition us. And I'll give you the example of politicians. I have many politicians that have been a journalist, and I do know that we have this issue of when a dog bites a man. It's not news, but when a man bites a dog, we have conditions, even politicians, to think that if you don't say bizarre, controversial things, your news will not see the light of day. So we see that, and we are conditioning them. If the media removed the cameras from those people who insult, those people say bizarre things, and concentrated on development, I will tell you, they will change. And that's the agenda-setting role of the media. And that's why we are so strong in raising this conversation, that the media do not neglect your role. Do not bring those dirty musicians who don't want to absorb certain decency into your stage and give them platforms. They are not the only, it is not just the sexualized content that sells. And I've given you, where there is money in music, it is gospel. It tells you something. And I'm not saying everybody must play gospel.
There's
I'm
space
just
for
saying,
the other people to...
Yes, there's space, but it tells you that Kenyans generally want clean content. And that's the space we are protecting. Say, for God's sake, we adults might be lost. We might have lost the bearing because of many reasons. But let our children and the next generation not come to lament the way we are lamenting. Let us do something at individual level to be decent, to try and live by the rules of the game. And the rules of the game is be fair, live and let live, but let's obey the law. And if I have a disagreement with you on how to interpret the law, let's go to the court.
Exactly. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are out of time, but usually we have a segment called The Twin Side. Now, this week we wanted also to speak about the other ends. I wanted to speak about the church, what's going on in the church, because I all believe we go to church, right? Yep. Those what happened in South Africa has captured the minds and hearts of Kenyans for the last 2 days. I'll speak about that, but we're out of time. But I want you to take a look at this cartoon, then you give me briefly your observation. Right, those are failed projects, and there's someone urging the government, how about turning this into a tourist site and earn revenue? We talked about corruption right at the top, right? So we're bringing this because we're closing, it's even right behind you. So I'll go with you first, looking at that as a Kenyan.
I think we ended up biting too much, more than we could chew. A lot of projects everywhere and very limited management or supervision of them. And also the people who are managing these projects are not being very accountable. As the president is lamenting, the corruption levels are really, really skyrocketing, and it's a grand amounts of money that are being stolen from public coffers. Should we turn this into a tourist site to earn revenue? It's really, really a sad joke, because this is our tax money, the same tax money that is paying Mr. Ezekiel to come here. But if we can be very, very serious in implementing our project, if we can be accountable on how the money that is collected or borrowed for purposes of infrastructural development or whatever budget support the money is meant for, it's actually spent in the correct way, and the people who steal the money are brought to book, then we can be in the correct path. But so far, I think we are 30% on that path.
30%? Daktari?
Corruption is not a government project. There is no place we sit. There is no place cabinet sits. and agrees that we'll be corrupt. Corruption is done by individuals. Even families do not sit and agree that because our brother is a big man, then we are supporting corruption. I told you it's a societal issue. It's a moral issue. There is no project in the government called corruption. The givers and takers of corruption, of corrupt or partakers of corrupt practices are you and me. And we at our level said we will not do it. And I can tell you, the sad story is that the people who try to live in the straight and the narrow, they're the ones who are demonized. I mean, look at all the things that have been said about me, and I'm telling you, you cannot...
It's about the cartoon.
No, it's a government. I'm just giving an example and saying it's not a government project. Okay? It is true and it's very sad. But what would you expect the government to do when we, at a individual level, have no sense of discipline? I've actually said, if I was the president, and if I can say this publicly, if I became the minister for morality or Ministry of Culture and Morality, I think I would begin setting the foundation where, if you have given a public office, you do not have to steal. I can tell you here, Ken, in a public, in a national TV, I live in the house I lived in 2008. Okay? I pay rent. No, I'm giving an example. I'm a public official. I have a very senior position. I drive the same car that I was driving 5 years ago. And I'm giving this as an example. You see, you just cough, you want to make it sound scornful, but it's not. I'm just saying, seriously, you can get into a public office and it's not about stealing. It's not about stealing. I can say a lot about myself, but I know it will not make sense because you are happier if I was in court fighting corruption, having stolen KFCB money. And we don't celebrate those guys who are making little effort. I have the power. I have something called AIE, the authority to incur expenditure. I could steal like anybody else, but I try. I'm not an angel, but I try, and I tell my guys, let us try. We are called to serve here. And I'm saying there are many, many cases like those, but they are not highlighted. You don't focus on those ministers who do those things. Success stories, moral people, morally upright ministers, PSs, public officials who are doing great things, they deny themselves to serve the public. The few that we hear are the ones who are stealing. Okay? You celebrate them. They are your brothers. When they come to the village with the choppers, you celebrate them. I have never driven a chopper. I am driving the car, a KBX that I bought when I was not even a CEO.
Okay.
As a CEO, I would be, looking forward to driving the fancy cars.
And all that.
You're getting it.
Yes.
So that the point should be, if you're given an office, you are facilitated with transport, you use it, you don't have to steal, you are paid, you chose to serve in the public service, serve within those limits. When you leave with a legacy that you are celebrated.
Okay.
And my prayer is that we would begin to celebrate public officials, ministers, PSs, CEOs, and other public servants who sacrifice to serve our people and not lynch them. Okay. And then we focus on the few who are rotten, because the few bad guys, there are very few bad guys. The majority of Kenyans are committed to doing what is right.
Brenda.
I think we should resist the individualization of this. People should take responsibility for corruption. People do not perform corruption by themselves. They work in networks, or in Kenya as we know them, cartels. So to say that people are acting by themselves and it should be brought down to the individual means that at the end of the day, nobody can be held responsible.
That is what the president said, right?
Yeah, no, but at the end of the day, when we say that it starts with you, which in Kenya, everything starts with you. Healthcare begins with you, water begins with you, drought begins with you, nobody's personally responsible. A second thing I'll say, first of all, of course, I think you've given Dr. Mutua here God knows how much money in unpaid, what is it called, PR for him to canvass for. I don't know what roles those were he was canvassing for, because it has felt like he has hijacked the discussion. I felt I needed to mention that. But we cannot clap for people for doing their work. We cannot, it cannot be that our standards are so low, yeah? They are so low that we want to congratulate people for not stealing, that we want to congratulate people for performing. That is not the way forward. That is not how we are going to live. Yeah? I will not congratulate you for doing your job. I want to speak for myself, and I want to believe that I speak for many Kenyans. It is expected that people should have leadership and integrity. That is what we expect of our leaders. Those who act contrary, we will talk about. Those who behave as they are supposed to do, well, congratulations. You took the job. The day it no longer suits you, you can resign.
Okay.
But
Yeah.
who signs these contracts, for example, to get us old trains from Spain? Who signs the contracts with a bankrupt company in Italy to supply services to us when we know very well these guys have no
Excavate
money?
dams and all that. It's a good question.
So all these cartels, all these networks, they have a hand or a connection to certain state officers who are undertaking these contracts on behalf of the government.
Okay.
The persons who are directly responsible in all these field projects, they should account to the people of Kenya at least, as Ezekiel is saying.
All right.
And Ken, just to add, still that the way we are socialized, because Brenda is saying don't clap. Even in school, we used to have, you answer a
Number
question
one,
and
yes.
let's clap for.
Clap for them.
And maybe
We
that's how we
celebrate,
raise
even
mediocrity.
in the team,
Don't you think?
in a football team. No, when a guy scores, or we clap. Let's celebrate.
Celebrate them.
Let us
Okay.
have that
That is his
attitude
point.
of
I think
celebrating.
Brenda
Yeah,
gave
that's
it
the
to
point
him.
I'm
That's
making.
his point.
Yeah, that we
He might
celebrate
have a
good
different-
deeds
yes.
and not overemphasize just on the negative.
Okay.
Because that's what the media is doing. So, and the society is being conditioned just to lynch the bad people, and we are not celebrating. Because if we celebrate, it will make sense for Brenda to be given a public office, serve without stealing, because you are celebrated. I think it's also a societal issue, it's a cultural issue, and we
Okay.
should embrace it.
We have run out of time. We've truly stretched this, and I'd like to give you 30 seconds each to finish. I'll begin with you, Brenda. Just a summary of what we've discussed. I know we've not touched on a lot, but just
Yeah.
summarize this for us.
I'd just like to encourage everybody to empathize, or at least put themselves in the shoes of people they might not understand, of minorities, and to always operate from a point where they consider the human rights of other people. And just because you are not in the position of the person who is oppressed doesn't mean it couldn't be you tomorrow, doesn't mean it doesn't affect you. And this apathy and nonchalance is not going to take us far.
Okay. Eric?
We all know, as we understood in 2010 when we voted for this constitution, we all know that we can build, and we have built, a very, very a strong country which has held together and which has one of the most advanced legal systems in our region. We know that we can agree to disagree, as we've done here, and we know that everyone in this country has equal rights under the law, and we should use institutions of law when we disagree to vent out our disagreements. I want to encourage Kenyans to know more about their rights, stay more vigilant about their rights, and to engage more in public discourse on those issues that they feel they don't understand, instead of acting from a point of non-information that would result to action that injures another person or violates the rights of another person.
Well said.
And when all is said and done, we still have a beautiful country. Like it says in the Desiderata, is it?
Desiderata.
Desiderata. Still a beautiful world. We should not give up on our country. There's no other country that we have. All of us share this space, this country called Kenya. It's beautiful. I'm widely traveled, and I come back to this country and I get a sense of pride to be back, despite all these scandals, despite all these challenges, and I feel them. I'm also part of this society. And there are challenges, there are things there are services I think I should get right from the village. But with all that, we still have a beautiful country. Let us build this country brick by brick, step by step. All of us, and not put blame games. I think until we begin as individuals to become patriotic, love our country, because this is our motherland. And just like a home, that's the only home you have. There's nothing you can do. You are a Kenyan. And we must begin by having a positive attitude to love this country and love the systems, correct them if we must, rebuke public officials if we must, let the media do their job, but we must begin by appreciating that we have a beautiful country called Kenya. We can change this country for the better of our children. And me, I'm committed to do my part. I have talked about it. I'll continue talking about it. KFCB is doing with very limited resources, by the way. Brenda, you are focusing on us. You should know our budget. Very little money, by the way. We're among the least funded organizations.
How much is it?
When I got to KFCB, by the way,
yes.
we earned 88 million, our annual budget. 88 million. Okay, 88. Now we have risen out of this conversation. A lot of people find sense in what we are saying. Now we have gone to 500 million. Okay, from 88 in 3 years.
Tenfold.
Okay,
Yes.
yes, we have done well. You know, it is still small given the mandate. Our mandate is so huge. If you heard what the law is saying, films and stage plays and regulating. We were doing it when we didn't have digital migration. Now we were doing 5 TV stations. Now we have almost 100. So our mandate is big. But what I'm saying is we are trying. We may not be perfect. I'm not perfect myself. And contrary to what Brenda and Eric think, I'm not as bad as I look or I sound out there. We are really committed. We are really committed to ensure that we leave a footprint that will be remembered, a legacy. And that legacy is not to hurt her or to hurt Eric, is to try within the law to do what is right and interpret the law correctly. And where we are corrected by the courts of law, we respect the rulings of the court.
Okay.
You have really allowed him to dominate the conversation, Ken.
Really, I gave you an opportunity. I didn't stop anyone from speaking.
No, I just have to say.
Yes, but I didn't stop anyone from
It's okay.
speaking.
I'm
Yes.
just saying.
Are you going to be in the Senate or Parliament?
Well, thank you for thinking of him.
We have run out of time and we have a lot of feedback. Unfortunately, today we'll have to disappoint our viewers. We're not able to read all of them, but I'll read just 5 of them. Let's take a look at this and then we can end. What do you have? All right, that's from Kibet Bernard, who says we need to talk about morality. We have a problem of society and issues on society. That's Kibet Bernard. Almasi Jr. says policing starts with an individual, then family, then society. So as an individual, what are you doing to keep the society on ethics? That's Malmasi. And then we have Babo Chebet. As an artist, I own copyright to what I present, not what you as audience interpret. So don't judge my performance, judge your judgment. And this is Punguza Mzigo, Frederick Okango, who is always watching. An artist who performs whether in public, private, and shows her his undergarments to his or her audience contravenes the provisions of Article 10, particularly on human dignity, which needs to be preserved. Is that the last? All right, that's all we had on social media. But remember, once we are off air, all of them are on Twitter, by the way. Who's not on Twitter? All of them are on Twitter, so they'll be responding to them. But let's do this final part. And we began by telling you what must be done if the war on graft has to be won. And indeed, with the new revelations that even more public funds could have ended in the hands of individuals, we take a look at some of the profound moments that brought us into believing that the president means business when he says graft must end. Let's begin with March 16, 2015. Uhuru Kenyatta orders fresh audit of all tenders in the last 2 years. President said to be getting upset with increasing cases of fresh corruption under the Jubilee administration. This was also the time Kenya was put on the spotlight, since the UK and the US citizens were found guilty of bribing officials. Suffice to say that the United Kingdom citizen named in the Chicken Gate scandal has served his full term of 3 years, while Kenya is yet to prosecute. Moving on to April 2nd, 2015, Uhuru tells governors they must step aside. Now, the county chiefs, however, defied that directive, saying they are elected leaders. Moving on to the 12th December 2015, during his Jamhuri Day speech, the tough-talking president outlined measures the Jubilee government has taken against widespread corruption. The headline then was, Uhuru will win graft war, and that no one will be spared in the drive on corruption. Suffice to mention again that the president has been consistent in the call for responsibility. But let's jump to 2018, just last year, December 12th, again, during the Jamhuri Day celebration, the president once again declared total graft war. He said those who thought they were untouchable were now facing the full force of the law. The last headline from just a few days ago, February 21st, 2019, when the president issued stern orders to cabinet secretaries and state officials, saying they will be held responsible and personally liable. The question is anyone listening? Every new day, a fresh scandal. And that's a good place to end our show tonight. Thank you very much, Brenda. Thank you, Daktari. And thank you, Eric, for coming. Let's do this again next week. Same time, same place. No, next week, actually, we are at the Devolution Conference. So we'll be doing it from Kirinyaga. Thanks for watching. Good night.